So it's a pleasure to be with you to discuss a little bit about Toyota Kata. First of all, who here, show of hands, is familiar with that term, Toyota Kata? Okay, good. So about half or so. And so the first portion of this, I'd just like to describe a little bit about what this is, like I said. And to start with, this is very important because this explains a lot of things that we as lean practitioners have been trying to figure out for, decades. For decades now, we've been going to places like Toyota and camping out in the trees like anthropologists, observing this strange species, trying to figure out how they do what they do. And what we're coming to understand is that there is a visible portion of this, and we've been taking this back and mimicking this and trying to replicate it and getting some limited results. And what we now are understanding more clearly is that there are some things there that are going on that are not seen, that are kind of hidden. And it's not as if people at Toyota and other places have been hiding this. It's not like this is a secret sauce that they've been keeping in some hidden room somewhere. It's that it's been very difficult for them to answer some of these questions. And the reason behind that is, if you think about the development of some of these people at Toyota, they have spent their lifetime immersed in a corporate and a national culture. And when we ask them, what is so different about the way that you think and manage? Well, naturally, they have no context to answer that question. So again, it's not as if they're hiding something, but there's something there that's hidden. And so through research, we're discovering that the thinking that's going on there is really very important. And the thinking turns out to be something that is very approachable, very replicable. It's something that anybody can do. So if you were to imagine the people at a place like Toyota, maybe in a cartoon world, the little thought bubble above everybody's head, if you could see what's going on, it turns out to be what you see down here in the lower right corner. It's a variation of Plan, Do, Check, Act. Has anybody heard that term before, Plan, Do, Check, Act? Most people have, so it's common knowledge, but the problem is it's not common practice. It turns out that if you were to walk down the hallway at a place like Toyota, that little thought bubble is above everybody's head. If you were to be able to take a black light or something and shine it on the walls, it's like it's scrawled everywhere in an invisible ink. PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act, the systematic scientific problem-solving process. So what we're discovering there is that there's something hidden, and Toyota Kata is an important way to reveal that, to understand it, and to be able to do it. So Kata, this term, actually means a practice, and it's a something that is an assist tool, really. Who here plays golf? I know you do. Hand goes up, right? A few people, right? I don't play golf. I hate golf. And I hate golf because, honestly, I'm very bad at it. I kind of suck. So, and the reason why that is because many years ago, I practiced very deliberately every day exactly wrong. I did it wrong. I was trying to learn how to play golf. I had my dad's clubs. He sent me a book, and I propped it up inside my apartment, and I was swinging all winter long exactly wrong, to the point where I went out to the driving range that spring, and I was all screwed up, unfixable. So what kata are good for are for practicing deliberately, but with the proper form. When we have the proper form, then we can really excel. So that's no different when we're talking about problem solving. If we don't practice with the correct form, then really things are not going to go right. So Toyota Kata, kata is this Japanese word for a practice or a way of doing. So we see this suffix tacked onto a lot when we go over to that part of the world. Kata, Toyota Kata, if we break it open and look at its component parts, it actually has two kata hidden within it. One is the improvement kata, and this turns out to be the very teachable, learnable way of using the scientific method to solve problems. And then there's another piece, which is the coaching kata. Toyota is one company that is really all about developing the problem-solving capabilities of people. And at the moment, by the way, they happen to make cars. But that's the way that they think about this. This is their core competency. This is their competitive advantage, you see. It's not technology, it's not the equipment, it's not the intellectual property that they hold. It's developing the problem-solving capabilities of people. That's what makes them flexible, adaptable, and able to dominate in the marketplace. That's the type of thing that we're trying to learn. And that's the type of thing that's very difficult to learn, and it's one of the things that you learn by doing. And when we're trying to learn how to do things by doing, the best way to learn that is with the help of a coach. So there's a coaching kata as well. These two things interact together. And so the indivisible smallest unit of improvement is a person trying to improve and their coach. And so that's the way that the Toyota Kata is set up. The improvement kata is a simple 4-step process, and it's repeated over and over again, and it's developed. And then the coaching kata, actually, it shows here 2 blocks. They're actually the same block, but they're just used in slightly different ways during these 2 separate sections. And the coach's job now is learnable and teachable as well. But these 2 things go together, they support each other, and it's one of the ways that we develop the problem-solving capabilities of people. Now, the 4 steps here are very important, and they go in this sequence. First is understanding the direction or the challenge. What is it that we're trying to achieve? And so with that, then, that's when we look at the current state and observe the current state with that challenge in mind. The next thing that we do is that challenge can be years in the future. It may never be reached. It's really there. The image here is of a compass. The real role of the challenge is as direction giver. What do we mean by improve around here anyway? So once we've provided people with that challenge, that direction, then we can have them understand the current state. Specifically, what does this current state look like, and what are the things that I need to do in order to move towards that vision of the future? But we want this to be something where people can get a sense of their progress, where they can achieve some goal and declare victory, and so that's why we have this next target condition out there. The next target condition is in line with the challenge, and as I reach that next target condition, then I'm one step closer to that challenge. And at every stage now, I encounter obstacles. Those obstacles are the things that I need to get around to figure out how to counteract with countermeasures. And so this experimental cycle of iterations then is what takes place in step number 4. So this is not new. This is actually an extension of the scientific method. We've all heard of the scientific method, right? Show of hands. We've heard of that? Think back to grade school or junior high, remember? Okay, so scientific method is very understandable. There's nothing new there with this. If you've ever done something like play a sport or an instrument, you develop those capabilities through deliberate practice. So there's nothing new there either. What is new in Toyota Kata is we're putting these things together for the first time. We're recognizing that the systematic scientific problem-solving method that we're trying to develop in people is something that's developed through deliberate practice. And so when we put these things together in an operating environment, that's where some real magical stuff happens. So again, the molecular level of improvement is simply an improvement practitioner. In Kata parlance, we're calling them the learner, working with a group of people to improve the people's process. Doing that in a systematic way. And then every so often we get coaching, feedback, and guidance from a supervisor or a manager who's using the coaching kata. And so that's the little binary system that actually is at play in operationally excellent organizations like Toyota. And then we can have the role of the second coach that actually develops the skills of the coach. That's a nice thing to have as well. So what's this all for? This kata is actually for developing a problem-solving scientific mindset. That's the goal. So remember what we're about here. We're about teaching people what lean thinking is all about. Think about that second word that's in there. It's not lean manufacturing, it's not lean production, it's lean thinking. That's really the heart of what it is that we're trying to develop. Everything flows from that. So the kata is actually a way of doing. That doing actually is improving a process, but our hidden goal is not really to just improve the process. Our hidden goal is really to develop the problem-solving capabilities of people, to think beyond the immediate problem that we're working on right now. Because when we develop that problem-solving capability, that's how we create learning, adaptive organizations that can get thrown problems that we can't even imagine today, and they're able to overcome and to solve those problems. So that's what we're doing with this. Now, again, this requires a little bit of practice as well. So, short video clip just to explain some things that are going on inside the brain in practice.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence, neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-travelled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep travelling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
Okay, so why kata? Why is this important? Well, it's because whenever we're trying to develop a new habit, we actually have to be mindful of some of the things that you just saw here. Changing habits is tough. Would you agree? It is. It's very tough. When we're changing processes, trying to get better results in an organization, that's all great stuff going on at the macro level. But part of the reason why that's so hard is because this is going on inside the brains of every person in that organization. So we can't ignore these facts. As a matter of fact, we have to be very mindful of them, and we have to use them to our advantage. So there's a lot of things that we can learn about changing organizations through this kata approach. That's pretty abstract. Let's take a more concrete example, something that maybe you're a little bit familiar with. Has anybody seen this movie? Karate Kid, right? Yeah, the real, see people making the motions over here already. Exactly, the Karate Kid. The original now, not that crappy remake, all right? But the original is one of the movies, I've got a few movies that are really lean movies. They don't know they're lean movies, all right? This is one of them. So you remember the storyline here, right? So Daniel here goes to Mr. Miyagi, and do you remember why? He got beat up, right? He got his butt kicked by a bully at school. So he shows up to Miyagi-san and says, hey, I heard you know karate. I'd like to learn karate. Why? Mr. Miyagi says. Oh, so I can beat up a bully at school. Now, what do you think Mr. Miyagi's thinking at that point? Huh? Is that the right reason to learn karate? No. Right? This guy, he's thinking, if you could see that little thought bubble, this guy is approaching karate for the wrong reasons. He doesn't, this boy maybe needs to learn the karate mindset, and that'll be a great life skill for him. That's kind of what he's thinking, maybe. So he needs to change Daniel's mindset, and how does he do that? Oh, remember that little motion, wax on, wax off, right? Discipline. Yeah, discipline. He applies the discipline of go wax my car, go sand my deck, go paint my house, right? And so Daniel does all that stuff. He still doesn't get it, and then we get to this great scene in the movie where, Miyagi comes at him and shows him a few moves, and the guy, you remember, Daniel just moves automatically. Whoa, 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 right? And so what he's doing here is he's teaching him, first of all, karate and the moves, but is that his goal? No, that's not his goal. That's just a stepping stone to get to the real goal, which is mindset change. Mindset change. So this kind of reflects something that we understand in the lean world, which is that if we're trying to change a mindset, it's easier to act your way into a new way of thinking than it is to think your way into a new way of acting. Think about that for a minute. These two things now are connected in a cycle. It's kind of a chicken and egg question, isn't it? We've got thinking that influences acting, acting that influences thinking, and we're trying to change that and elevate it so that that whole cycle is working at a different level. But where do we influence? Where do we interact? And we've been trying, I know I have, for many years to try to talk to people in very rational ways and expect, again, I'm an engineer, right? So, and expecting some type of a behavior change. Now I'm a recovering engineer because I recognize that these things don't work, right? Trying to verbally influence somebody to act in a different way and to get that whole cycle elevated at a different level, that doesn't work. It turns out that acting your way into a new way of thinking is really the more powerful approach. So we need to learn some things about being able to do this. Danny, think fast. Toss back to me. Okay, thank you. All right, now what I just did with Dan here, I told him think fast. I really didn't need to tell him that, okay? He thinks fast, you think fast, everybody really thinks fast. And that's a good thing for the most part. But it's also part of the problem that we need to defeat. So at your table, there's some cards. Would everybody take a card, please? The card has two sides on it. Please turn the card to the side that simply has the cross and the dot on it. And then hold it up so that the dot is on the left. The dot is on the left. So you're looking at side one that simply has the dot and the cross, and hold the dot on the left. Now what I want you to do is close your left eye, and then look with your right eye at the dot, and then move the card in and out, and see what happens. What do you notice?
There's a point where the cross disappears.
There's a point where the cross disappears. Everybody see it? Move it in and out, hold the dot on the left, close your left eye, and then look at the dot with your right eye. And then go slow. And then at some point, as you're staring at that dot on the left side, the cross on the right disappears. Do you see it? Why is that? Why is that happening? Anybody know why that's happening?
It does.
You've got a blind spot. You've got a blind spot, okay? Inside the back of your eye are all these rods and cones. We know that from school. And the whole back of your eyeball is covered with these receptors, except for a spot where all of those nerves go into one bunch and it goes back into your brain, okay? So it doesn't have any receptors there. You literally can't see that one spot. But do you notice that from day to day? You don't, do you? You don't. Yeah, so there's a blind spot there, and your brain knows it, and it fills in the blank. Okay? Now, here's what I want you to do. Flip the card over. Now, do the same thing again. Hold it so that the dot is on the left, and then I want you to close your left eye and look at that dot, and then move it in and out again, and see if you can find that same spot. Tell me what happens now. Do you see it? Does the same thing happen? What happens?
Just make a straight line.
What's that?
Vertical line disappears.
The vertical line disappears, doesn't it? But what about the horizontal line? It stays the same. All right, so when you're on side one and you're looking at this, it's just a blank field. But now, when you look at this and you hit that same point, your brain is actually completing the line for you. So your brain is actually filling in the blanks. Your brain is thinking more than you know. Your brain is not showing you an objective view of reality. You know, everywhere we go, we need to keep that in mind. So the problem with this is you have blind spots all the time. When you're trying to solve problems, your brain is automatically, how many people know this? Your brain automatically jumps to the answer, doesn't it? Oh, I've seen this before. Boom, there's the answer. Okay, on to the next thing, right? So thinking fast actually doesn't serve you well in a lot of cases. We actually need to be aware of that and slow the brain down. And so, this is actually a very useful thing from an evolutionary biology standpoint. I mean, imagine if every time that you encountered some problem out there, your brain said, there's some missing information. I think we should stop at this point, and I should gather more information so I can complete the picture. Okay? If you do that, in a situation like this, you're going to get creamed. So it's good that we have this method inside the brain of the brain thinking autonomically, filling in the blanks, and that works for us. It serves us well in most cases. But now when we're trying to solve complex problems in organizations, that automatic reflex of jumping to solutions doesn't serve us well. And that's one of the things that we're doing with Kata. So one more example of this. Shout it out. What does this say? What does it say? One more time, louder please. Jumping to conclusions. Thank you. Okay. No, it doesn't. Okay. It doesn't say anything of the kind. But now your brain just completed the bottom portion of that. Even when I'm showing it to you like this, if you look up there, doesn't it look like that? All right, so now we understand we've got something that's very hardwired, very deep in the brain, and we've got to try to change this. How do we do that? Well, it turns out that our old friend scientific thinking is very, very useful in this regard. So we need to figure out how we slow down our thinking process and, again, develop good form, develop good habits. That's what Kata is for. So we've created a lot of different stuff, a lot of different ways to solve problems, and it can be very confusing and bewildering for folks, but the mother sauce here, the thing that this all comes down to, is our old friend, the scientific method. So we need to understand that it's available and be mindful of when we use it. So in Kata, we kind of build a diagram that looks like this. Inside that green circle is a very known and comfortable zone. Inside that area, that's our world of plan and execute. So everything that you know in business that talks about planning and execution, it actually works only inside that known zone. You can plan, and then you can execute that plan. and be fairly well assured that the plan is going to be executed correctly, because it's known stuff. But here's the thing that most of the business books miss. What we're trying to do in organizations doesn't lie in that green zone. It's doing something different. It's beyond this line here around the green, which is what we call the current knowledge threshold. Outside of that circle, it's unknown and by definition unknowable. What do you do then? Can you plan and execute out there? You can't. I'm an old Army guy, and we had these things that we just called Murphy's Laws of Combat, little funny sayings. One of them was, no battle plan ever survives first contact with the enemy. Right? When you're sitting in your tent and you're looking at the map, you can plan and imagine that it's going to be great. But as soon as you go out there and cross the line, you are by definition out there and it's unknown and unknowable. Might as well take that plan and just kind of put it in your pocket, because you're just going to develop the situation. So understanding where that current knowledge threshold is turns out to be critically important. There is a current knowledge threshold in just about everything that you're trying to do in the world of improvement. We have a process, it is known, and it currently works like this. We want to bring performance up to here, and by definition, we haven't done that before. We don't know what's going to work. The whole method of plan and execute is something that doesn't work. We actually need to use the scientific method out there. Doesn't that sound complicated? Using the scientific method? It sounds daunting, doesn't it? Imagine you and all your colleagues and employees using the scientific method to discover better ways to do things. Scary. I have faith that you can do it, because I know this kid can do it. Right? That's my youngest daughter, and I hate to say it, but the truth is that I do little cognitive science experiments on my family. So there it is, it's out there. For the benefit of you and every other lean practitioner that's out there, I'm out there doing little science experiments on my own family. So here's what went on here. When she was just a little kid and started crawling around, that's a very important developmental stage in a baby's life. That's when they learn something called object permanence. That when one thing goes behind another thing, that thing in the back doesn't disappear, it doesn't cease to exist. It'll pop out the other side, right? And so the baby kind of, the brain wiring starts to wire in that direction. We understand that this is happening. So I played a little game of peekaboo with her, and I had a ball underneath the hat, and I just lifted up a couple times, peekaboo, peekaboo, and then next time I kind of grabbed the ball through the hat and I went peekaboo, and you should have seen her drill a little hole with those lasers in her eyes, looking at that spot where the ball was. And what's going on there is her little developing brain has just said, this is different than what I just expected to happen. Hey, conscious brain, pay attention. Something interesting is going to go on here. I might learn something new. So even babies, even infants, understand this learning dynamic. What we expect, what we predict to happen, what actually happens, and any time that there's a gap there, pay attention, you're about to learn something new. Your experiment didn't work out the way that you planned. Failed experiments teach us something. Successful experiments are kind of boring. So when we're out there, we're experimenting things, we need to be very much sensitized to this. So if a 1-year-old can do it, you can do it. Here's a little bit more. Another example, here's a group of second graders, and they've just been introduced to the scientific method. They got taught this the day before, and they were taught about how it's useful, and great. So the next day they come in, and they come into a puzzle that looks like this, and some forms and things, and they get into teams of 4, and we tell these kids, hey kids, guess what? That scientific method that we just taught yesterday, it's not just for sciencey stuff, it can be applied to anything. So, we taught you yesterday, observe the world around you and come up with a hypothesis about how it works. Then you do controlled experiments. And then you look at the results of those experiments. Anytime that you get something that's different than what you expected, now we can gather some lessons learned. And that's how we build this big mountain of stuff that we know about the world. Cool. Guess what? We can now use that for any challenge that you have. Billy, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to get better grades in math. Great. Susie, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to come up with a way to get my mom off my back when I, need to do some laundry and chores. Great. So come up with a hypothesis about how you could do those things, conduct controlled experiments, record them, and do what works. Learn from the controlled experiment results. And we're teaching those skills to second graders. Again, if second graders and infants can do it, you and your folks can do it too. So Kata gives us some things that we're discovering now are critically important. One of these is to build practice every day. You want to get good at something? You want to rewire neurons a little bit every day. And so a study was done a little while ago. I would have hated to have been a kid in this study. But what they basically did was they took kids who were learning a musical instrument and they broke them up into groups. So one group will practice 15 minutes every day. Another group will practice for 2 hours on Saturday. Another group, and this would suck, will practice 2 hours every day, right? And then let's see what happens. Who do you think learned the most?
15 minutes.
Little bit every day. There's something magical about little bit every day. So this is very effective at rewiring neurons. So a little bit of practice every day. The second thing is what we're calling this starter kata. Just a very simple assist tool, okay? We saw some images of this, like a little fingering diagram, okay, for if you're learning guitar. I don't think Carlos Santana has one of these things in his pocket, right? He's an expert, he's evolved beyond that. But for the beginner, this is a very useful thing to, again, practice the correct form. Practice the correct form. The other important piece here is coaching. Somebody outside of your skin who's going to observe you, compare what you're doing to ideal form, identify the gaps, and help you learn and develop. And finally, there's a sense of mastery that we need to build as well. People, if they're going to use this method and do this every day, they need to feel like they're getting better at it over time. So they need to see some results. Now, I've tried to do this recently with meditation. Folks have told me for years about the benefits of this, and I've never been able to do it. So using this combination now, after about 5 failed attempts over the last 3 years, now, finally, I'm getting results. I'm seeing progress, and it's really taking these elements of what we know works in changing mindsets and behaviors, and now I've simply applied that to myself, so I can say this from a first-person standpoint, this combination of things works. In Kata, we have a lot of these assist tools in order to develop problem-solving capabilities. Now, this looks kind of bewildering when we see all the things here with these red labels. Each one of these has some more detail in terms of how it is that we use this to build skills. This is more of an advanced picture. Don't get freaked out by this. But it's basically, if you boil it down, it's basically a learner and a coach working together in order to systematically solve problems. So, Toyota Kata, it's turning out as a very, very powerful technique. It's something that provides a set of what we call starter routines that you can begin with and then adapt over time. So you begin by being aware of it, being able to do it, and then being able to coach it and teach it. So we want to bring people through at least the first couple levels of mastery and get them to the point where they can begin to infuse this into the culture and kind of groom it to fit what's going on inside their organizations. It's an application of the scientific method that we know so well, right? It's something that has been around for centuries. The scientific method works. Now we're simply taking the scientific method and we're using it for business purposes, for personal purposes, for things other than scientific problems. So we have a little saying in the Consortia, which is systematically solving problems, everybody, every day. This gets us to that stage much more quickly and effectively than most of the other things that we've seen out there, so it's very powerful. And again, our ultimate goal is to build these cultures of continuous improvement. If you want more information on Kata, please contact me. It's all stuff that is out there in open source. It's not some hidden proprietary thing, and it's designed to be something that's approachable and learnable, and I hope you get some good stuff out of it.